I'm gonna try to pace myself. We'll see. Oh,
I was
I'm
gonna try
fucking
to. I
bored.
don't know, I'm gonna see how I feel for the show to see if I'm gonna record. Oh, our patron numbers just dropped a bunch. We were almost up to we're at like 1150, and now we're back at 1100.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it month to month, especially at the beginning of the month, it goes down. Don't worry about it.
I'm going. I'm going to Vegas next week, and I just hit the mother load of list of 10 best dispensaries near Caesar's Palace.
Are you going for work or what?
Yeah, Gartner Conference.
It's just like super baked at like work events or what? Or is
Uh,
anyone else from your company going?
yeah, there's 4 or 5 of us, but we're not like we're staying in the same hotel. But I
Yeah.
figure I gotta all my free meals and drinks are finishing up like at 8 or 9 o'clock Vegas time. I gotta have something to occupy myself in the hotel room.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, do
N
we know
N
what the
I N I G H T I N G A L E.
it's
Nightingale.
yeah, in and then yeah,
Gale.
GALE. Yes.
All right, we're going live. There it is.
Correct.
Link is out. Let me post in Slack. I liked last week jumping right in, so we'll do that again this week. Intros and then bam, and then just a reminder, John, that there will not be word of the day music underneath you. So we'll do the same thing. I'll play it, I'll kill it, and then I'll cue you.
Okay. Casey, I was telling Eric I miscounted, or maybe did I email you guys all about this? About the fact that I miscounted and we really only have one more week to program before the best of. Is that registering?
No, it's not. I don't. Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. So I might have just pinged Eric about it. Basically, like we're gonna have to record the best of in 2 weeks to get it out before Christmas. So um, we just have one more episode, and we had those two movies, Sweetheart and Lose. I don't know if anyone picked or took a look at either of those.
No, I don't really have time, but right now. But can you give
I
me the
think
elevator pitch?
well, I'll read you what it says on the internet. A shipwreck survivor on an uninhabited island must fend off a malevolent force that surfaces each night.
Which one's that?
That's that's Sweetheart, and it is a Blumhouse joint.
Okay,
Uh,
that sounds interesting.
Currently for rental. It is not streaming. And then hold on, Lose film. Lose was the one that I'd heard the most about. I think it's foreign.
Oh,
A demonic entity follows a young female cab driver into a rundown police station. Luz kind of has the look of like early Cronenberg. Well, no, I mean if you saw the posters for these, you would understand. I think why people are like hype on this movie.
gotcha.
I was
Um,
just gonna say I saw some chatter on Sweetheart when it came out on Slack. I think it was like it was okay kind of reaction.
well, that was why we added it. Here, let me see if this works. Yeah, Eric, check out this poster. Like this is what
Any
makes
idea
me
what's going
interested
on
in
with
movies.
Sophie? What the heck here?
What's she saying?
Oh yeah, that one.
I think it's just gonna be like kind of bonkers.
I didn't know what you're talking about because I'm from Indiana. I pronounced it Luz.
Well,
Lose.
that's I mean it's a Spanish word. That's why like
It's gotta
or
be light or something, right?
yeah, it means light in Spanish. But then I don't know if it's like it could just be that like the woman's name in the movie is Luz or something. Like who the hell knows?
All right, monitor the Sophie situation. I gotta go blow my nose, so I'm ready. When we're ready to go, I'll be right back.
Okay. Doop, doop. Did she?
She's rebooting.
Oh, Roger. Wait. So your conference is over the weekend though?
No, I fly out Monday.
Oh, okay.
Come back because so I'll be out next week. I go back. I fly out Monday and come back at like 1 in the morning on Thursday.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say. Wait, 1 in the morning. That's a little.
That was the only direct flight they had. Was leaving Vegas at 6:50.
Hmm. All right. Direct.
Yeah, because all of ours is Southwest.
Yeah. Uh, I'm like reading about the this Lose movie now. Let's see. I'm gonna say Sweetheart has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, but then only a 5.5 on IMDb. What the fuck? Is she on?
She's having computer trouble.
Well, she just texted us. That's so weird. Are we like adding the wrong Sophie? That's like what I think is happening here.
She said she tried to answer earlier, and she sees our names.
It's like so confusing though. Is she? Are we friends? Like I don't. I don't fucking know. It's so weird. Eric, do you see these texts from Sophie?
Do you guys normally hit join call when I call you? Like, does it pop up and it says join call?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I hit join call, it looks like I've joined. It says you're all there, but I'm only one I can see. But I'm the only one I can see here. Obviously, you guys can't. Fuck.
And it's so weird. Like, so I clicked on share a link for others to join, and it lists it like it's like she's in the call. I do not fucking understand. That is. Do you want to just like? I mean, I don't know if this is gonna help, but do you want to just try hang up the call and redialing in, like calling everybody, or see if she can call you, Eric, maybe, and then add us in. Are you just ignoring me? You would
I'm
not take my suggestion seriously.
Typing. I'm telling her to try to call me separately and see what happens.
Okay.
I don't know what that's gonna do, but I can't even hang up. Oh no, remove from call. It doesn't do anything.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like we just need to like restart this entire call.
I'm in a hotel. Okay. I don't know if it's gonna work. There's no way hotel Wi-Fi is gonna like do the trick here.
We watched the first 3 episodes of that new M. Night Shyamalan show on the Apple.
Yeah.
It's fucking bug nuts.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't watched any of the Apple stuff. Maybe that'll be my first one.
We watched the morning show too, up to current. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people are talking about it, I feel like. I know, like, not many people on Slack potentially, but
Yeah, they're taking a brave. They're taking an interesting take on the whole Me Too thing and whatnot.
What is this? Oh my
The
god.
morning show.
No, don't fucking do this. Fuck. Oh, this fucking Windows is trying to restart on me. I'm gonna lose my fucking shit right now.
Guys!
With this update, you'll be okay. Don't want to update right now.
Sophie.
Eric, we are live on the internet.
I don't
Like,
care. Don't fucking update Windows. What the fuck? I will fucking lose my shit if this computer updates in the middle of the show. I will freak the fuck out.
I don't understand. Like, is it not a setting where you can just be like, don't fucking
John,
update?
you don't have Windows computers. Since Windows 10, it just fucking does
God, no.
whatever the fuck it wants.
It just does what it wants.
It's fucking...
You can still schedule it.
But I love that like 2 weeks after Eric took the bitch out of the buffer music. He's like dropping a million F-bombs on the live stream.
Listen, this is the
Wow.
pre-show, okay?
I want you all to know that since my computer was not cooperating, I'm currently Skyping you from my phone, which is balanced on top of a pasta sauce can in my hotel room.
Okay. You sound pretty good. Can I ask a question? Where is this mic that you're talking into?
It's probably on my headphones.
Yeah, can you just move it around? I want to hear it and talk.
Okay. Is it on this?
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
this helping?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're like talking, I'd prefer it if
Mhm.
you could just hold it up a little bit.
I
It's-
can do that.
It sounds better that way. Yeah, you sound clearer.
Okay.
I like your hair, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
It's red.
I also like your hair.
Guys, also this beer is in honor of all you dads.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Are you in Ohio?
Yeah, I'm in Cincinnati. Well,
Yeah.
I'm
If I start
technically in
cursing in the
Kentucky. My
middle of the
hotel's
show,
in
it's
Kentucky,
because
but
Windows
I'm
is
across
trying
the
to update
river.
my computer without me allowing it.
That's their home there. The Rhine.
Oh,
We
we're
just
live,
started
but
getting
we're
all their beers
recording
here earlier this year.
All right.
Oh, I'm so jealous. We don't get it in Missouri yet. I really like Rheingeist.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
How
They
do
got
I
good cider too.
Windows update settings, Casey? Is that what I want?
Yeah, you should be able to set it in there. I'm talking shit. I don't fix computers anymore. I don't know.
Oh, but hold on one second. All my notes for this movie are on my phone, so I'm gonna email them to myself so
Oh
I
yeah,
can Skype you
it's
guys
telling
and have my
me
notes.
it's telling me it's gonna do it at 8:27 p.m. I will riot.
Casey's gonna serenade you though, so don't worry, it'll be cool.
All right, how about tomorrow, Windows? How about that? Have fun, because it won't be on tomorrow. So suck it.
Now he doesn't have.
11:27 p.m. tomorrow when it will not be on. How's that? Beautiful. All right, I just need a
I just
second.
pull-
I just need a second. We'll get going.
I just pulled it up to in case Valeska's watching the pre-show because I figured out to shake it off.
Oh, do it. Did you?
Yeah. The last note quite requires 3 fingers. It's a little harder.
I think so. Let me see. Oh. This has the cough medicine in it, which I already took. I wanted just that. Don't worry about it. I just won't take it. It's fine. Sorry.
Excuse me.
Oh, and it's DM. Didn't you say you didn't?
I think that's what the DM means. I think the DM means it has the cough suppressant in it. Sorry. I'll bury it tonight, see what happens. If it's bad in the morning, I'll just take the other one. Okay, I'm almost ready here. So we'll get right in off the top. We don't know what we're doing next week, right, John? But we can.
I think we go with Sweetheart. It's a more.
Oh, you guys, it's so good.
All right, there you. go. It's
Okay.
a more conventional film. It sounds like based on the reviews I'm reading. So
That's the Blum joint.
yeah. it's
Okay, yeah,
Blum's
it
Yeah.
sounded
joint.
good from what you described, so I'm down.
I enjoyed it. I find it's more fun if you don't know a lot about the plot before you watch it. But
Yeah.
Too late, I guess.
it's still gonna be good.
Sophie,
Let me know if you need an extra. That movie was great.
just for my purposes, talk with that thing like 2 inches from your mouth.
Like this close to my face.
Yes, that's where it should be, theoretically.
Okay.
I think you sound better than when you're at home on your
Yeah, your
your
connection is actually like significantly, like I can see your video's like crystal clear right now.
Wow. Well, I have like free Google Fiber at home in Kansas City, so it's not the best internet.
Okay, that
Wow.
so what we want to do is though we'd like to send you a long Cat 5 cable, so that when you're on, you can just run it right into your router. You don't have to use wireless.
I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it
It's
out.
2 plugs. You go dink,
You plug it
dink.
in.
That's it.
Well, I know, but we have a different setup because it's Google Fiber. Like we don't have like a traditional router. It's just like a weird box plugged into the wall.
Okay.
Does
Well,
that make sense? It's
Does
like
the box
installed
have
in the wall.
ports?
It might.
the
I haven't really
box-
looked at it.
the box should have ports. Yeah. Don't you have
Okay.
Wi-Fi though?
Yeah.
Where does that come out
Are
of?
you sure it's not just like one of those 1984?
Because I have Google. I have no. I'm sorry. I have Verizon fiber, and it's the
Mhm.
same thing, but it still runs into like a traditional Wi-Fi hub thing.
Yeah,
You still have like a
something-
regular router.
Yeah.
Well, something is giving you Wi-Fi. Like
Right,
the
that's what I'm
Wi-Fi is
saying.
not just like magically showing up in your apartment.
No, I know that, John.
All right. Do me a
I'm
It could
favor.
saying,
just be a
like, I don't-
wireless router, guys.
Do me a
I
favor.
don't have
I'll
a
send
traditional
you.
router, so I would need to look at it.
Do me a
but
favor.
yes.
I'll send you a picture of what the plug looks like, and if when you get home, you can just take a look.
No, I know what a Cat 5. Okay, I'll look at the box when I
Okay.
get home.
Well, I'm
Do
just trying to
you,
help.
Sophie? Do you?
Yeah,
Well-
it's the big long that looks like a phone cord. You just pull
Yes.
same thing as like what? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
John.
What kind of accent was that? That was like
Nice. That
Wisconsin.
was
Chicago-
straight Philly.
Chicago.
Jan.
No, I would have said Philly there.
All right, we gotta go.
I guess you're right. Jan is more. Yeah. So. all right.
I'm recording. Everybody mute, please.
Welcome to Bloody Good Horror.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric, and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be reviewing Jennifer Kent's Nightingale. Jennifer Kent, of course, director of, as John Schnars would say it, The Babadook.
Babadook.
Joining me tonight, first up, one of the founding members of BGH, the new class. Please welcome Sophie to the show.
Hey guys.
Next up, from Indiana, one half of Cinema Fromage. Please welcome Casey.
Hello.
And last up tonight, who needs this Baby Yoda character when you've got this beautiful baby boy around? Coming to us from New York City, please welcome John Schnars.
I'm like a full-grown Baby Yoda. Which
Yeah.
I guess is like a
Sure.
regular Yoda.
Right, which is just Yoda, which is also good.
Hey,
Taller, thinner.
Yeah.
I would say.
I feel like Drunk Schnars has a real like old Yoda vibe to him.
Except he's real stupid and Yoda's very smart.
hey,
my
by
grammar-
canon rules.
Drunk Schnars has an
canon rules,
IQ.
John's not a full grown baby Yoda. yet.
Drunk Schnars has an IQ of like 53.
Well, I was gonna say my grammar is as interesting, but the logic tends to.
The facial
dictate.
expressions are similar. You're just like always kind of like confused and scowling.
Yeah.
Yeah, glassy-eyed.
Yeah. You look puppet-like, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
that's
Like he's being held up by invisible strings that aren't very sturdy.
That are just Joe. It's just Joe holding him up.
Oh, John, that baby Yoda. He's wonderful, isn't he? He's beautiful.
he's a gorgeous, gorgeous baby.
I can barely look at it. It's like it should almost be illegal how cute that thing is. Like I feel like we are all being so hardcore manipulated, and it is so working.
Oh, yeah.
So, has there been like Yoda takes or Baby Yoda takes that are bad? Like, I haven't been
Literally, I saw
This is
one
our
thing,
first Baby
and it was
Yoda, I think.
I saw one thing, and it was a joke about
Oh, really?
the fact that how can you hate Baby Yoda?
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
I feel like my only thing, I mean, I love Baby Yoda. I just need some Baby Yoda playing with porgs is like what my heart really needs.
Yeah,
So,
Yep.
Yeah, that came up on Slack, and someone mentioned that the Porgs only live on a very specific
yes,
planet.
yeah.
It might have been Natalie. I think Natalie might have known.
And
this.
there's a strong chance that baby Yoda would eat a porg.
Oh yeah, that would
That's
make me
true.
really sad.
The best, by far, the best thing to come out of Baby Yoda is that anecdote about Werner Herzog
Yeah.
telling Favreau, calling him a coward because he was shooting twice in case they needed to replace the puppet with CGI. I love that
Wait,
so
was-
much.
Was
That
it
and that he-
Favreau specifically?
Yeah, no,
I
he-
didn't read the full article.
He said
okay.
it to Favreau. He called him a coward on set when they said, we're going to do it again without the puppet in case we need to replace it.
Oh my god.
And then he cried.
Yeah, he also said it was so beautiful that he cried.
The first time he saw it, he cried, which is the best thing I've ever heard.
I would call Werner Herzog one of the greatest living Americans, except
Yeah.
that wouldn't really fit.
He's probably
Yeah,
an American.
he's just a gem.
Yeah.
He's a gem.
Oh
He-
yeah.
He also said in that same interview that he had no idea what other movies Jon Favreau had done, which is the beautiful capper to all that.
He's probably never seen them. Maybe Swingers. Like maybe
Yeah,
he's seen Swingers at some
maybe.
point, but
Yeah.
yeah.
John,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of swingers, we are swinging
Is
in.
this a
We're swinging into the end of the year here, John.
okay?
Uh,
Sure are.
We got what, one episode left before the end of the year?
Yeah. So we had announced last week our upcoming schedule. It turns out we might have miscounted weeks, and we realized this week we're only going to do one more show before our end of year show.
Yes.
So we had to flip a coin, and we came up with Sweetheart.
Yeah.
It's a Blumhouse joint. J.R. Dillard, I think, is the director. I was just
I think
looking
it's
at
J.D. Dillard.
J.D. Oh, see, I thought I was confused because I thought there's no way it's J.D. and then Dillard, but it is. You're right.
I
Okay.
mean, what better way to round out the decade of Blum than with a Blumhouse movie?
There you go.
Would you call that a Blumpkin?
No, I would definitely not.
John.
Yeah. should
So
be
yeah,
good.
we're doing that year after that, or a week after that, doing the year ender, and yeah, coming in hot into the new year here. Good news, John. I picked out we're gonna take a little 2-week hiatus after holidays, Christmas, New Year's, then we'll be back. We've officially, with the help of our patrons, picked out the first ever BGH reruns that'll play those weeks. I'm happy to report, John, I listened to both shows and nothing problematic had to be cut out of them.
I'm not surprised. I
Yeah.
think I'm sure there's stuff. I'm sure
Well,
in
These
however
are
many
also
episodes.
like not that far back. I mean, they're far back. Some of the first one, but it's not like anything sub episode 100. I make no claims that you should listen to that. Is all I'm saying.
I stand by them. I stand by everything I've said throughout time.
I highly doubt that, but okay.
Well,
All right, guys. Yeah, tonight, like I said, we're here to talk about Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale. This is was this direct to TV? Was this like a TV movie type thing?
It definitely got a release. It got a release here in New York. I know it played in theaters for a little while. It was like a big deal in Australia, obviously, and it's been winning a bunch of awards.
Yeah. So
It's
from what
kind
I
of-
could tell, it did a festival run in 2018, and then was released wide here in August. So we're counting this on 2019,
correct.
just so people know. All right, guys. It is time. Let's take a quick break and discuss The Nightingale.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Up the prime time. Main feature.
And we're back. All right, John Schnorrs, you beautiful bastard, you.
Mm-hmm.
Every week here, you use that English degree that you don't use on a day-to-day basis to
Literature degree.
same thing, to bring us fancy words that have to do with that week's movie. So without further ado, please bring us the word of the day.
Eric, today's word is wadi.
Ooh,
That is WADDY. Wadi, an Australian Aboriginals war club, a stick or club, especially a walking stick.
oh,
So a wadi, it comes to us. If you can say that, I don't know if it has actually arrived, but it is a Daruk word. But it's essentially the name of the spears that at least the Aboriginal people that we see here, both hunting and I don't know, warring, I guess, fighting for sure. That the device that they're using is essentially just it looks like a javelin made out of wood.
it's a pointy
it's-
stick.
Yeah, but it's definitely like a specific type of stick, right? Like it's dense, it's pretty heavy based on how they use it, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point.
Versatile.
But yeah, very versatile. But yeah, that's the wadi.
Could stab in the neck. Could stab in the leg. Could stab in the groin. All kinds of
You
stabbing.
can throw it.
You
Well,
can
the
throw it.
throwing was the really impressive part to me.
Throw,
So,
stab. That's always effective.
yes. So Daruk is the language they list. The language that we hear a lot of in this film, according to Wikipedia, is Palawa Kani.
Hmm.
I don't know if they are related languages. I don't know if they, have anything to do with each other. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we probably don't know a ton about going on here because
John,
it's Australia.
John, I read the Wikipedia article about the war that this is set during, so I pretty much know everything now.
I also did. I did the same.
It's actually
it's good times.
It's actually fascinating history.
Yes, agreed.
I'm guessing.
As an aside, the language that they're speaking, the Palawakani, is almost extinct at this point. So this is, as far as they know, the first time that it's ever been spoken in a mainstream movie.
Oh wow!
Wow,
Oh,
that's
nice.
awesome. I'm
Wow.
very fascinated by sort of languages that are going extinct. I mean, it's the kind of thing. I feel like there's like magazine articles every once in a while, and there's all these like projects to try to capture them and make sure they're preserved. To put it in a film of this stature is, I don't know, pretty cool. Pretty cool. Do we
John,
want to talk about?
Tell me a little bit
going on
about what you know about Jennifer Kent. Tell me a little bit about what you know about this movie, and I'd love to know why
Yeah.
it's in 4x3. If you could tell me that.
Oh boy,
I
we're
read it.
gonna
So,
have
you know what? You talk. I'll look that up.
All right, we might have to just put a pin in that. Jennifer Kent. I don't know a ton about her, frankly. The Babadook, the Babadook, excuse me, for those of you with pronunciation fetishes.
Okay, by pronunciation fetish, you mean we just like to say things right?
That was her. That was Jennifer Kent's first film, 2014, and definitely a film that put her on the map.
I'm not sure I knew
for-
that was her first film. That's mind blowing.
She had done a couple other films, a couple other shorts before. And yeah, that was her first film, debut feature. She's been around a lot, right? Like, so she's been acting since the 90s. She apparently worked with, oh, God damn it, what's his name? Lars von Trier.
Lars von Trier.
Yeah. So she's lists Dogville as like one of her credits as a PA. I mean, so who knows? But yeah, I mean, so she is herself Australian. Babadook, if for anyone who can remembers, 2014 was an Aussie film. This movie sort of goes. I don't want to say it goes a completely different direction. It explores some similar themes, but in a completely different vehicle. So the Nightingale is a period. It's funny because Wikipedia lists it as a period drama film. I would almost call this like an Aussie Western meets a rape revenge film. I mean, obviously we'll talk about sort of the specifics of the narrative, but it's set in the early 19th century, excuse me, while Australia is still essentially a penal colony. Specifically, it's set in Tasmania, which is the southernmost part of Australia. I think it's actually its own separate island.
I believe it is.
So the main character here is Claire. Claire is an Irish convict living in Tasmania and working as essentially a servant to the British Army that is stationed there, essentially fighting this war that Eric mentioned, right? So it's called the Black War. I mean, I was reading about it as well, like at the risk of getting too political too quickly. It was essentially a genocide against
basically
the Aboriginal people.
Yeah, basically what I was
Tasmania.
reading was that it's something that's still kind of debated today, and that there are people that want to reclassify it as a genocide, but it's something obviously still pretty talked about.
Was
today.
that war specific to Tasmania?
Well, it was I believe
no,
just
I think
Australia.
it was essentially like a blanket term for the
Across all the
extermination
islands?
of Aboriginal people. I mean, again, we are not Australian
No.
historians, but
But it's fair to say we have our own version of that.
no, well, and it's funny. So I don't know. We don't need to get too much into it. Like, I feel like a lot of films, especially like Westerns here in the United States, have, especially more recently, or I would say going back as far as the 90s, kind of recast a lot of the Western narratives in terms that are a little bit more, I don't know, not apolitical. They're a little more neutral around like who was the good guys and who were the bad guys. Because the original Westerns were all like white person moves west and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
settles the land and tames the wilderness, and that narrative obviously changed. This movie is very much in that vein, right? Like all of all of the white people for the most part are heinous, with a
Yeah.
couple of exceptions. And I would say all of the Aboriginal people are portrayed in very sort of I don't know, favorable isn't even the right terms. They're given real agency, and they're real characters
Yeah.
in a way that Native Americans and other Westerns aren't. In any event, just to get to the plot really quickly, Claire, she is a servant. She is essentially raped and mistreated by the sort of commanding officer, Lieutenant Hawkins. He's one of these characters, we've seen them in film, where he is on the surface really nice and upstanding, and then the reality of him is he's the worst of all the monsters. He has a group of sort of miscreants that are helping him execute this war in this area. He had been trying to get a promotion. It all kind of falls apart. He flips out. He kills Claire's husband and baby, in a just like one of the most brutal scenes I think I've ever seen in my life. And then he goes to essentially try to claim a post up north. And the rest of the film is essentially Claire, having survived this attack, partnering with an Aboriginal man named Billy, and going after them to exact her revenge.
Yeah, that would be it. All right, Sophie, what do you think?
So, very full disclosure, Cece texted me while she was watching this movie and advised that she told me the plot of the first 30 minutes and advised that I skip them, so I did. So I know what happens in the first 30 minutes, but I did not watch them.
Okay, I feel less guilty then.
Minutes?
I feel less guilty then for the part that I skipped.
And I texted her and I was like,
I'm angry with all of you.
I skipped a full Listen, John, you don't even want to.
I know.
But I was like, okay, listen, I skipped 30 minutes in and I still got to watch 2 rape scenes. So it's.
Oh yeah, there's at least one you didn't.
It's a lot.
That I can think of. I'm trying to.
So yeah, I mean, so this movie is really intense, and I just finished it this afternoon. And to be perfectly frank, I think I'm still processing and trying to decide what I think of it as a whole. So, I took a break sort of in the middle of watching it, and listened to Jennifer Kent was on Switchblade Sisters before this movie came out, discussing the 1961 film The Innocents, and then talking about this movie. And I love The Babadook, and I watched the short that it's based on, The Monster, and thought that it was also incredible. So I had really high hopes for this movie, and I started hearing good things about it when it came out, but I was also just hearing about how brutal it is and hard to watch it is, and I was genuinely not sure I was going to watch it at all. So it's clear from listening to her interview, I mean, Jennifer Kent is a filmmaker who is incredibly thoughtful and incredibly talented. I mean, this film is visually really stunning, and the sound design is really amazing. I think there is definitely a conversation. I think there's room to talk about the fact that, I think while I see the reasoning for trying to do it, I don't know that trying to handle a narrative about sexual violence and gender violence and a narrative about racism was the best thing. Because I think, the actor that plays Billy is phenomenal. But I think that because we are placed so firmly in Claire's experience, and I know that we're not supposed to be on her side or like her when she's saying racist shit to him, but I think because she is the protagonist with whom we spend the most time, and we experience her suffering with her more than, I mean, we experience some of his too, but I think in the end I have sort of mixed feelings about the way that the entire movie plays out.
Well, it's juggling a lot, and it wants to get you to the character arc on both people. I think it does a pretty good job, but I agree, it's a pretty hefty task that it's taken on.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's a very lofty goal, and I understand that, she clearly, I mean, Jennifer Kent, based on her interview and also just reading about the kind of preparation and research that she went through and the actors went through to do this movie, I think everyone, I don't know that there would have been a way to do this movie where you didn't deal with both of those issues. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, because they were.
From
Yeah, I mean,
at
it's
least
so
with her as
present.
the director, like you can't just have Claire and then not talk about the Aboriginal people, but like she's also not the person to tell that story wholeheartedly. So it's complicated, but overall I enjoyed the movie despite the maybe enjoy is not the right word, but appreciated the movie.
Casey.
Um, I appreciated the movie for what it was. Ultimately, I think this movie, like I was saying in our emails today, this is a movie you definitely got to be in the right headspace to be able to take in fully. And I was not there when I watched it. I was not distracted. I actually watched it in the living room, wasn't sitting on the computer distracted or anything like that. But there is there's brutal parts we've talked about. It's hard to watch in the very beginning, and there's some really gnarly stuff going on. And then you're kind of introduced into a pretty languid pace throughout the rest of the movie as they're marching through there. I think if I had to say I had issues with it, it was the length of the movie and some of the pacing. I was hoping to get more to the point quicker because I wanted to see some resolution and some, comeuppance or whatever for these people that have been hurt like that. But at the same time, John had mentioned earlier getting the problem of getting caught in genre expectations for this kind of a movie because it's kind of a rape revenge movie and you've got expectations from what we've seen in the past classically. And I got caught up in that thinking we're going to see a pretty big bloody outcome. And that's not necessarily what we get. You're going to get the outcome that you want. Spoilers, but it's not going to necessarily be what you're hoping as cathartic as you can see. But
It's
that also
not-
goes along with the character arcs too.
It's not clean and
So-
easy. It's like intentionally
Yeah.
challenging, I think, to those tropes.
But outside of that, like the acting in this movie was phenomenal. The characters were really well written. I really loved the character arcs as they went through. Watching our main actress and the way her character developed towards Billy. Billy was phenomenal throughout, and watching how their relationship changed throughout the course of this journey and whatnot to see how they both had biases against each other. They were able, the way that they worked through that and everything was really fascinating. So it's a movie I'm glad I watched. I can't say that I was blown away by it or loved it. I enjoyed it, but I don't know that I'll go back again.
John.
I think I'm gonna come down on the side of I love this movie.
I'm with you, so it's okay to say it.
Well, no, hold on. I'm very upset with everybody who skipped the difficult scenes
Listen,
because
I skipped 90
it is-
seconds, okay, John?
yeah, but I'm telling you
I couldn't.
so it's
I
look, like,
watched it.
the rape sequences are really brutal. I actually would say there's some violence in this film that is as violent as
Yeah.
anything I've seen depicted
Somebody
in a
on
movie.
Slack said, I don't know who this was. Somebody in Slack said those scenes weren't that bad. That person is now banned from Slack once I figure out who they
Said
are.
that the rape scenes weren't that bad.
Yeah,
it was like the
like-
general violence.
No, come on.
No, because
The
I was
rape
going in thinking like, oh, okay, this isn't gonna be that crazy. It was very bad.
They're not.
They're not
pu-
visually
they're not
explicit.
prurient.
It's just like
Yes.
it's just very it's drawn out.
They're
Like
not
she makes you
exploitative.
sit there in the moment.
Yes. They are also very much like from Claire's point of view. I think there's even a couple of first-person shots during each of the scenes, as well as there's a sequence obviously with an Aboriginal woman being raped, and you get first-person shots there as well. No, the child there's two children that are murdered in this film. One of whom is essentially an infant, and it is easily like top 5 most brutal thing I've seen in a movie.
Yeah.
The way it's done, the way the scene is structured is so difficult to watch. And like, look, as we've talked about like what having kids can do to you in terms of like just like the children crying in this movie
Oh my god.
is really, really brutal. Like Jennifer Kent
Listen,
knows exactly what she's doing.
I think that sound is kind of triggering for everybody, right? It's an evolutionary thing that's baked into all of us. You hear that sound, it's distress. But
Yeah.
when you're fresh off of 3 straight years of that sound being horrifying, even just because like your kid's awake in the middle of the night, like I couldn't handle like every nightmare she had is just like baby screaming in the distance. I'm just like, oh my god, I can't listen to this.
So yeah, the movie is it's extremely violent. It's extremely brutal. I think both Casey and Sophie mentioned sort of some of the issues around plot, or she bites off a ton in this movie, right? And
Oh,
I was reading a little bit, and maybe she talked about this in the interview you saw, Sophie, but she worked with the Tasmanian Aboriginal sort of community. So it's not just the research, but it's like it's the dedication to authenticity and to representing, the cultures. And frankly, like, and so the one comment I saw was that she felt really strongly that this movie had to be this violent because it's a testament or a representation or an illustration of the things that were done to people.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, the Aboriginal people of Australia, but also the convicts. I mean, the Irish at the hands of
Right.
the English. I mean,
Right.
so like,
Yeah.
it's not worth sugarcoating these things. Like, people's children were murdered. Like, Aboriginal families and essentially cultures and civilizations were
Right. If your
completely
goal
wiped
is to
out.
if your goal is to be true to history, you're not really doing that justice by sugarcoating it.
Well,
Right.
that's
And I don't
what-
know if I don't know if it's the same quote that you're talking about, John, but I assume it is. Like, I saw a quote from Jennifer Kent sort of talking about how for people in Australia, this history is often glossed over. And then obviously, if you are not from Australia, this is something that you don't know a lot about. And she very much felt like if she was going to tell this story, she had to do it all the way and show how awful and brutal it is. And I very much respect that. I guess where I'm coming from with skipping the first 30 minutes, and I think like this is a broader conversation, is like, I know that this movie is not strictly a rape revenge movie, but I think like as that genre goes, and just like showing rape in any kind of pop culture, like I think there's a conversation to be had about what the value is and like how much is enough to show. I'm not necessarily arguing that the way she did it was exploitative, because like I have enough respect for her as a director that I'm sure it wasn't. But
Well,
yeah.
just a bit, like, I wasn't on the show, but weren't you like pretty high on revenge? I mean, just
yes,
to, like,
I was. Yes, I was. And
Yeah.
like,
See. Yeah. That's interesting.
but like by contrast, that movie, like I didn't watch the entirety of the rape scenes in this movie, but like the rape scene in that movie is less than a minute, and like you don't really see very much of it.
Yeah, I mean,
but I found
I
that
don't know.
scene. See, that was really interesting because I watched. I don't know. I don't want to relitigate revenge, but I watched it not.
Or
kn-
just,
I
like,
also
rape
don't
scenes
want to have that
in
argument.
I
again.
watched it not knowing it was a female director, so I think in some ways like I just was in a weird headspace, not really knowing what I was watching. I found that scene also to be really disturbing because of how casual it is. Like what I think makes this thing easier for me is that dedication to realism. And again, I skipped not the first scene, I skipped the second scene with the baby because at that point I sat through the one scene. I'm like, I can't watch this fucking thing. This second scene with these, like, it's really bad. But
Well, they're raping her in front of her husband.
and the baby, like, you
The
know
baby
what, the
gets
baby's
killed.
crying. You know where that's
Yeah.
going as soon as baby
Yeah,
starts crying. Like,
and then they kill the husband in front of her.
yeah,
which is,
I
it's
saw
the
that
whole
part.
thing.
I
It's
did
just
see that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think this is like a stunning movie. Some of the best acting I've ever seen in a movie, from top to bottom. Everybody's incredible. The main actress, the guy who plays Billy, the guy who plays the lieutenant. This guy is such a bastard, and he is so good at that, like, just violent, aggressive, like arrogance and lack of any kind of empathy towards other people. Like he is so good, it's almost frightening. And I think his as good as our two leads are, his presence is what makes this movie so intense throughout because he's such a kind of like ominous presence even when he's not on screen. And I was in some ways just as riveted by his group of people traveling through the bush and their like slow disintegration as I was our two main characters sort of coming together and learning to respect each other. I agree she's biting off a lot here, but I think she handles it like masterfully. Like it's actually the amount of kind of thoughts and feelings that this film can kind of stir up in you, while in my opinion giving justice to a lot of what she's trying to touch on here, is actually really incredible. I really don't enjoy your typical rape revenge movies. I didn't love Revenge. I feel like it's interesting to hear some people say, and I heard this in Slack too, like about, I was kind of hoping for more of a, I think people want that catharsis in a rape revenge. Like that's why you go. That's why
Yeah.
in some ways
That's
you go
literally
to it,
why
right?
the genre exists. Like, and not
Yeah,
just rape
but
revenge,
to
any
me, and
revenge
this is
film.
my issue, and again, like I'm a dude, so I understand. Like I'm coming at it from like not the perspective that the movie's from, but it feels to me like a little the insistence on, we need to see this like violent retribution in some ways to me cheapens the severity of what we're trying to talk about here. And the reason why this movie touched me so much was that it's so realistic. And she gets set on this course where she feels like she wants violent retribution, and she gets it on one of the characters, like in the second act, in like one of the most
Super
brutal
brutal.
scenes I've ever seen.
Mhm.
But again, like
Yeah.
realistic, like realistically what it would look like trying to kill a person with your bare hands. It's not clean. It doesn't happen right away. There's a scene where the guy like keeps talking after you would hope,
And like cries out for his mom.
and like
That's
Yeah.
and that like disturbs her on this deep level. It's like she got what she wanted, but she realizes now it doesn't fix what happened. And I guess that's kind of my problem with some of these movies, is this feeling like, oh, we're good now, like I killed this guy, it's fine. And like
Yeah, I mean,
so
well,
I'm just
that's
saying,
a
like,
very specific kind of revenge
all-
film that you're describing. Like,
but in the horror genre, that's most of what we get for the most part, I think. Like, or it's
Yeah.
in the horror, when you see these movies cross into the horror genre, I feel like it's usually super heavy focused on that moment. What I love
Yeah.
about this movie is it gives you that moment on some level, and then it steps back and it's like, actually, she's like a fully formed, complex human being who has still lost her entire life. And guess what? Like, we're gonna show her working through the rest of that too. And in the meanwhile, all the time, there's this slow respect forming between her and Billy. We learn more about Billy. Billy kind of learns he's lost everything without even really knowing it. And we see the two of them come together. And then through that, we're learning all this other stuff about the society here, because then when they come together, suddenly they're being looked at differently by the people they run into. I mean, really, it's like, it's heartbreaking. Like all this
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, everything with her
Well-
storyline is disturbing and heartbreaking. Everything with Billy's is heartbreaking, and like there's so many just awful. There's so much injustice happening in this movie. The fact that like the ending isn't easy, and it's not fully a relief at the end, but I think the fact that she's able to even give you that final beautiful kind of moment of some kind of resonance is like actually really impressive, considering how bleak the rest of the movie is. So
So
I
bleak.
really like the ending, even though it's not clean.
no.
Yeah, I really
agree.
like the ending too. I actually think that I like the movie better. So spoiler for the way that the movie is going to end, but I appreciate that Billy is the one that sort of has the like violent retributive ending that we anticipate instead of her.
Well, and but see, this is the thing. I actually don't think his is a violent retribution. So because it's and now we're just like fully spoiler, but this is like another thing that I love. So look, really quick before I get to this moment, because I think it's like one of the best moments in the movie. But the point, and Casey brought it up, like, I agree. Even insofar as I love this movie, I still think there are times where it's just there's so much plot. Like, and again, I'm gonna get to the like scene that I wanted to bring up, but the sequence where she has to pretend to hold him at gunpoint so that they can cast essentially a bunch of soldiers, and then like they just straight up murder 4 people directly in front of. I mean, that scene was so goddamn heavy, and like,
But all of those
necessary,
scenes though is like the work she's doing to like reinforce what she's trying to tell you about the way these people lived and what they were living under.
No,
Yeah.
it's super impactful. My concern is like it's so much, like there's so many plot points. And anyway, really quick, the point I wanted to make about Billy and the ending, they have a conversation after they escape the town where Billy describes like how things work in his community, and as Casey said, or maybe it was like that that community's now gone, but she's asking him how did it work before that, and he says basically like, oh, like if someone was bad like them, we would try to change them, and the elders would talk to them, and essentially they would go through this whole process, and then she was like, oh well, okay, so then what would happen if that didn't work? And he was like, what do you mean? He's like, those people wouldn't exist anymore.
We kill
essentially.
them. Yeah, we kill them.
Yeah, and that's where he basically has a realization that what he has to do for her is quote unquote like clean the community of the bad people. So like,
yeah, I think
But at
that
the
like
same time,
no, I
that's
don't.
what's-
I think you're right in that. I don't think he's getting revenge for her. I think certainly there's like an element of
He's got his own
camaraderie
revenge to
for
get.
her, right? But
Sure.
like
Right.
he's kind of snapped in his own way at this point, and this is the target in front of him.
Yeah,
But
I
the
just
way
love that it was that layered, that
I
it
mean,
had that
we
much
did,
going on.
yeah, we didn't even
And to
bring
think
up.
about that scene, just to carry on from where John was
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Eric, but the that shows the beauty of the writing of this. While there is a lot of shit being thrown at you, like we said with plot points, there's a lot of really fine moments like this where Billy realizes he's going to have to go clean up the community, so to speak. But then we watch Claire go and try and solve it his way and go talk to the guy and get him to change and basically confront him with that you're being an asshole.
Yeah, I
and this
mean,
is
I don't,
why.
and I'm not sure she was trying to get him to change so much as just blow his spot up in the parlance of the day. But
Yeah, but you
I
can see
mean,
where
what I
that
love
could be.
what I loved about that though is like again, like these movies so often kind of fetishize the revenge violence aspect, where like this movie sort of gives her another way of regaining her own agency, right? Because she's so terrified of this guy that even when we've been built up for like an hour that she's tracking this guy down, she's gonna kill him. She sees him and she instantly starts like shaking and she can't do anything. And there's several moments of where they confront each other and she is like powerless. And so that moment is about like her taking her power back, but in a kind of like a way you wouldn't expect. Like that's a really powerful scene when she starts singing and like her voice is cracking up. It's just like the other thing is like I would kind of disagree, at least like personally, that this movie drags it all, because I think what she does is she establishes this terrain, this bush is like I mean in like the Australian bush, you know, like we're in Tasmania here, but same kind of idea, right? It's so mythical. I think if you don't live there, like, you know about it, right? I mean, okay, even if it's from Crocodile Dundee, but like this is kind of a thing known all around the world, that this sort of really hostile, unfriendly terrain, right? We're living in this is my favorite kind of period piece in that it's really, you talk about the authenticity. It's so focused on how they're surviving out there. And just the visuals are really stunning. But she does such a good job at setting up that it is so dangerous out there, right? That like even if you've escaped the people that are chasing you or whatever, you're gonna run across other people, and they're all gonna want to do you harm, or throw you back in prison, or try to kill the guy you're with, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I actually think almost every scene in this movie to me is really pregnant with tension because of what's just around the corner, and that's not even to mention the dream sequences where she's really, I think, putting her genre skill to use. These almost feel like fantasy horror scenes where she's like having these hallucinations in her dreams and stuff. I was at no moment like bored in this movie. Like my only issues were moments where I almost couldn't take how intense it was, you know?
So that's a fair point, and saying that the plot dragged for me or that I thought that the movie is a little too long is probably not the correct wording. But the problem is, like you just said, we were spending it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, 20 minutes. We're spending this 2 hours, 20 minutes watching this girl and Claire and Billy trek through the Tasmanian outback. And it's just really brutal. So maybe more than a drag, the word to use is it's a slog, because there's a lot of emotional shit to get through.
It wears you down
to
as it
get
goes
to
on.
the end of it. Yeah, and it wears you out.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And like we've talked about some of the brutal scenes, but even when it's not something as outsized as like watching innocent people get killed, which happens a lot in this movie, it's also just like houses that the British people burned down, or dead bodies in a bed that the British people left behind. I mean, the trail of violence sort of behind these guys is really draining.
I mean, the interesting thing
watch.
too is like the history isn't surfaced, right? Like I read a bunch about the movie, but you're really kind of thrown into it. Like really the fact that there were that Australia was originally like a British penal colony, like is not discussed in the movie. So this was said in the 1820s, and from what I read, the practice of sending convicts there peaked in the early 1830s. So this would have been really when it was ramping up and causing even more tension with the natives there. But I think what's interesting about it is it's kind of like a universal story about colonialism. So I think that you understand what's happening even if you don't have the historical context. I like to like read that stuff, so I think there's so much there too if you can kind of go and do a little reading before or after, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice that she gives us the viewers the credit that everybody's probably going to know at some point that Australia was a penal colony I'm going to give them, the credit they're smart enough to infer from that
But
without having to give us the details.
but my larger point being that like it doesn't matter because when you see
Right.
what the colonists are doing to the natives, like that is such a universal kind of like European story that like we all understand it without needing the larger context.
Yeah, I mean, I almost can't think of a comparable film in any language or culture that's this sort of bleak, but also takes this much care to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
From all the, the clothing and the sort of the technology that they're using, the like carriages, everything looked so pinpoint. And again, like who the hell knows? There could have been an anachronism.
Everybody
Oh,
everybody
that
was
gun
so
is from
dirty.
1832. It's
Everybody
like,
was so dirty.
Yeah.
Remember we went through that period of
Super
like
dirty.
4 weeks a couple of years ago where every movie we did was just dirty people.
Mhm, yeah. No,
Um,
this this very very much could fit in. No, I mean, I was talking a little bit at the very beginning about how I think westerns, as we kind of have moved through time, you've seen this like evolution toward more realism, more sort of re-exploring the historical narratives and kind of turning some of this stuff on its head, or in a sort of less pro-colonial manner. This is just, it's so far from. I mean, there's been other things that are in this vein or in this direction, but it's so far, down that road. I am curious. I can't remember if we talked about this over email, but it came up a little bit on Slack when people were talking about the movie. Where this lands or how this lands with you as a horror movie. In some ways, I ask kind of just because I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Because like personally, it's like Jennifer Kent is someone who's just like horror interesting, and like we would probably have picked up anything. And there's a lot of things that put this into a camp I'm comfortable with us covering, but it's definitely not an explicit horror film.
Yeah, I mean, we talk
Yeah.
about, right, like some movies are kind of so violent and bleak that like no other genre will have them in some way, which is weird because I'm turning genres into people. But you know what I mean? Like this is a violent film in a way that some horror films are. And I think that makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I also think that Kent's
There's
style,
definitely some.
I think that her style, like she just has those horror roots, obviously, and like it really comes to like even, I mean, the dream sequences are huge. Like those are straight up shot like horror films. But I also
Yeah.
think that some of these more ominous scenes in the bush where there's fog rolling through and everything's gray, like that stuff just so feels like horror to me, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of chase sequences or stalking sequences, and I agree. She's using some of the mechanics and the language that we're familiar with from horror, that
Yeah.
to infuse this with more maybe anxiety or tension or just
Atmosphere.
straight up fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
But
interesting.
it's
Well,
also
and
not uncommon for a movie involving rape and revenge, amongst other things, to be considered part of that genre either.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like rape revenge movies, like just as a subgenre, employ varying degrees of horror tropes, but sort of get lumped into horror just because of how brutal they are. And
Yeah.
so this, to me, like would have fit even without the dream sequences. And so for me, like once you add in the dream sequences, it's a pretty easy fit into horror.
Yeah.
Um,
It comes down to brutality in general,
Mhm.
and it goes both directions, even beyond just the rape.
And I just wanted to say really quick before we move too far from the previous conversation about sort of like colonialism more broadly, I was very interested. One of the things I really liked because it felt very intentional was the fact that I think with the exception of the Aboriginal male characters, like we don't really get male characters that don't have like a twinge of just being like shitty and bad. Like even the nice old man who invites them back to his house and then insists that Billy eats at the table. The first interaction we see with him is him like yelling at his wife and telling her to shut up. Like,
Well, but that's because she was being nasty. Like I actually would say he's the only unimpeachably good character.
no,
I mean, maybe other
but
than
it's but
Billy,
there's
I don't
still
know.
there's still a like
He's
a
like
mean, like,
patron.
paternalistic, I guess.
Yeah, there's
I
certainly
don't know.
I think there's a paternalistic tinge to that. But like I found myself wondering, it's like that's a fascinating scene, and in some ways to me it's the scene I have the most questions about in the movie, which is weird to say in a movie like with as many insane scenes as this movie has, but like she's trying to give you a softer, I don't know, she's trying to give you a little ray of like hope in humanity or something, but I wondered how realistic it was. Like I wondered
Yeah.
in this village, right? Like in this small some kind of I don't know, they're like very isolated, right? Where your social currency is very important. Would this guy have stuck his neck out and let this black guy in his house and fed him, and then the next day give him a ride somewhere? Like, when you have to turn around the next day and live with all these like flaming racists around you, where you're in a very tiny town, you're probably living harvest to harvest, like very, like if something goes wrong, everybody could die, right? Like, so you're relying on each other. I don't know, and I just wonder.
It was.
I wondered if that was realistic. I have absolutely no idea. You'd love to think it is, right? You'd love to think that
They
even
were-
in the darkness, there's somebody
Yeah.
there to show you a glimmer of humanity, right? But I don't know.
I see your
they,
point.
I was gonna say they're far enough out that I didn't think it did not bother me at
Like,
all.
is
I
it?
do
No,
like-
I'm just asking. Like, is it a convenient movie moment to make us feel a little good before we go into the finale?
I think I just like the implication that Jennifer Kent was nervous that the Australians would have hated this movie if it was just so anti sort of European colonial Australian that she had to give them one toehold into.
Well,
piece
and
of
like I
history.
actually had the same thought, Eric. Although that setup leads to, for me, the most powerful scene in the entire movie, which is when Billy sits at the table and just starts sobbing
Breaks down, yeah.
because he's like, "This is my land," and I feel like, yes, it's very nice, I guess, that they let him sit at the table, but like when he starts crying, nobody
And he just sips his soup.
comforts him. They just kind of like sit there like they
Yeah.
don't know what to do and just like look at him and keep eating their
Well,
food.
they're nice and still only goes so far.
There is something visually
Well, right,
fascinating.
but
like,
that's what's so important. I think that scene is like devastating.
Yeah.
and again, like we talk about the authenticity of the costumes. Like, everybody in this town has got some like fancy. Like, there's a weird like dichotomy of these kind of what is this, like Victorian era, John? Like 1820s? I don't even know, but maybe that's like later on. But like,
no, I think this might actually. I
but
don't
like,
know, I can't remember.
they're all
exactly.
dressed in their like fancy outfits, but they're in the outback or whatever. They're in the like wild, and they're trying to like tame this
Sometimes
land.
they like to feel pretty.
They're trying to tame this land, but they just look so stupid because they're in these outfits, but they're also filthy because it's just there's dirt everywhere. I don't know, like, it's fascinating kind of dichotomy, this like arrogance of like, we're gonna just go here and live here, even though it makes no sense for us to live here. You know what I mean?
Also, the soldiers like stupid ass hats.
The hats are dumb. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like, so, but there's the iconic, right? Like, there's the iconic red military uniform, which to Americans is like very memorable iconography because it's what we think of when we think of the Revolutionary War. And so that imagery I found really interesting because it's in a completely different context to what we typically think about it as, like redcoats or whatever, right?
I know you said that everybody, was in this movie was dirty. It's Australia. They're all filthy just because of the conditions they live in and stuff like that. But Jesus Christ, you could smell those soldiers on the screen, especially Ruse.
Yeah. So really quick, I did look up the aspect ratio thing. So I'm reading an interview with Jennifer Kent where basically like she said that she was very conscious of not wanting to make a travelogue film because of how beautiful the landscape is. And so it was a conscious decision to frame it 4:3 because basically it forces you to laser focus in on the character stuff that's happening because then they're filling the screen and they're not being dominated by this kind of like picturesque landscape around them.
I can dig it.
She also said that
So weird.
she also said that the studio made her promise to make a 16:9 cut, but that she basically intentionally placed like boom mics and shit in the frame so that it would cost them way too much money to digitally remove them to ever do it. So in this interview from when it came out, she's like, they're never going to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I couldn't remember like if she explained why she did this aspect ratio, but she talks about that in Switchblade Sisters, where she was like, they wanted me to like leave it so we could do a cut in this aspect ratio as well, and I just like left things in or left important stuff outside of that frame so that they would have to.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of baffled by it, but but now that sounds really smart, so I guess I just have to go with it. It's just like between this and the lighthouse, I'm like, guys, can you just give me the full frame? I want to see everything, okay?
Yeah.
Just to like give you guys some hot off the presses news, the Australian Academy Cinema Television Arts Awards
Yeah, I
were
saw this.
today.
Oh, the Akasats.
yeah, the ACTAs.
Oh, I have heard of
Yep.
that actually.
This movie won for Best Film, Best Director, Best Screenplay. Aisling the girl that played Claire won for Best Lead Actress, and the woman who played the Aboriginal woman who gets assaulted won for Best Supporting Actress.
Oh wow, and she's not even in the movie for that much. But I guess that's supporting actress, you know. Yeah, I mean it's really great. I'm actually. I don't remember why, John, because I'm old and I don't remember things, but I remember not loving The Babadook that much, and I think it was just because it's like a visually stunning movie, but still in a lot of ways the supernatural stuff that's just we know, John. We talked about it. It's not my bag.
I'm definitely in the. Not that the Babadook is bad.
I also
actually
remember
think it's a
super
good
hating
movie.
the kid in that movie.
See,
What?
I'm just in
I
the.
can't with you guys
I'm,
right now.
I'm just in the like Babadook is good, but not like amazing.
I just think it's a really
category.
visually impressive film. Like the stuff with the books and the cutouts, like that stuff's really neat. I bring it up just to say like this movie I think blows that movie away, and I'm more than ever now hoping that she decides to do more genre work because you can just see how good her chops are here, and like I think you could see her doing some really interesting like socially conscious horror stuff if she keeps doing this stuff.
Can I just say for the record that like I still feel conflicted. I have not decided how I feel about this movie, but like The Babadook is a fucking beautiful and like flawless and emotionally resonant movie, and all of you are wrong.
Let's fight.
Yeah, why don't you go watch it watch the whole goddamn Nightingale and then come back to me, huh?
Hey,
Oh,
John,
shit.
if you want to get into a debate about why I personally don't want to watch 30 minutes of rape, we can talk about it off air.
There's a lot of stuff in that 30 minutes. It's not the rape scenes.
See, I kind of was
Alright.
prepared to skip ahead, but I was like, I just watched until I'm like, okay, I'm gonna skip this part.
Look, it's everybody's decision to not. Yeah, I'm not trying to give you personally, Sophie, a hard time.
It does feel like you are trying to give.
I will say, though-
you're the stand-in right now for anyone who's skipping the first.
I
30
will
minutes.
say though, if you skip the first 30 minutes, it's only like 90 minutes long, and that's
Yeah,
Great.
that would make it better.
And I will say, listen, as a person who did skip the first 30 minutes, like, I'm going to be very real with you all. If you are a survivor of sexual violence and you're like, this movie sounds interesting, but I can't handle that,
no straight
you can
up.
skip the first 30 minutes
Yeah.
and the movie still is, like, very engaging.
And I fully expect that.
And had some rape stuff after the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
you're
it-
still going to get some.
But I fully expect too that there's people who would hear this review and be like, I can't watch it, and I think that's obviously totally valid.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
'cause
I
he
could
doesn't
barely
pull
watch a
punches
lot of
with-
it. I could barely watch a lot of it, so I understand.
I reserve the right to
Speaking-
make fun of you later, though. is all I'm
Speaking
saying.
of punches, was anybody else hoping that Claire was going to punch that crabby old lady that worked at the house with her at the beginning?
Oh my god, yeah, that you're watching all this brutal shit going down, and then so after the first scene where she's like assaulted by a lieutenant, we're basically she just wants to leave, and he kind of pulls her, and this is after this party where the sergeant or whoever the higher ranked guy is there, and yeah, she goes back to like the house where like these maids or whatever are watching the baby, and this woman's like, basically, it's just like again like so much going on in this movie about like social strata, right? But like there's this accusation that somehow because this guy has kind of been assaulting her and wants to keep her, he's given her like her own little hovel, and like she gets to wear a dress to go to this thing, and but that's kind of used against her by the other women who don't get these things, and like she doesn't want them, like she's only being given them because she's being assaulted, but then it's kind of turned around against her by the other women, and it's like there's just so much going on with
Yeah.
social pressure in this movie that's just like.
But that scene after the baby scene, and Claire's walking back into the village or wherever the house is with the baby in her arms, and that lady's like, "You're supposed to be here at sunup." It's like, oh hell no, you didn't.
That
Yeah.
is when I started the movie. Like, I started with her walking in with her dead baby and that old lady yelling at her.
And there's so much
Yeah.
good like and then we can kind of wrap it up here, but the entire movie there's so much good nonverbal acting going on. That scene's a really good example when the women figure out what's happened and they just go like they just turn like they
Yeah.
just saw a ghost or something. Just so like Billy has a lot of really incredible kind of body language reactions to things, and it's just,
Billy
like-
was phenomenal, and just especially like in the scenes you talked about where he found out what happened to his people, and he found out that his people were pretty much wiped out and stuff like that, and he wasn't even speaking then. All the emotion on his face and stuff was just amazing.
yeah.
Well,
You
and
felt
he's
so
able
bad
to,
for him.
like, his character, I think, has like there is very, very little comedy in this movie, but I think there are scenes where like she wants to press on or she wants to do something some way, and he just sort of responds to her like, that's ridiculous. We can't, the one that comes to mind immediately is when she first hires him, I guess, for very little money to go with her and lead her. She's giving him a really hard time, and he says he doesn't want her to bring the horse because it's going to slow him down. And of course, she won't let him ride on the horse, and so he has to walk. And so she's yelling that if he doesn't hurry up, she's going to leave without him. And so she just takes off, and she turns around, and he's not there. And he's like, you can go the wrong way if you want, but they went this way. I think, like, he's able to balance those moments, and they allow, like, a little bit of a pressure release without just, like, taking you out of it totally, because it's not, like, slap your knee funny, but it's going to let the tension out a little bit.
It's kind of like when he tried to tell her that they couldn't cross the river because it was too deep, and then you have that whole sequence, and they get out, and he kind of looks at her like, "I told you."
She just does it.
Right.
I love that little thread too, where the older guide like leads the soldiers kind of in the wrong direction, kind of like in a roundabout way that just like kind of screws them. I mean, that doesn't go. That doesn't.
He didn't. I was gonna say he didn't just lead them in a roundabout way. He literally led them to like the worst possible place.
Yeah,
He
like
took them to like the top of a mountain and was just kind of like,
F you.
y'all.
Yeah, I mean that scene doesn't end well for him, but there's like something kind of satisfying about their like pure rage at being led in the wrong direction. God, that lieutenant dude is terrifying and like
Do you
terrifying,
guys watch
but also
Outlander?
no.
No.
Is he on?
like the
I was
hunky
gonna say
boyfriend?
no. He's not in Outlander. There's a very, very similar character in Outlander played by Toby Menzies, and I would be shocked if this guy was not inspired by Toby Menzies' character. Anyone out there who's watched Outlander will know what I'm talking about.
What's his last name?
Menzies.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you might change that before you become an actor, but okay.
Nope.
Got it.
Nope.
As
he's
far as
sticking to
other
it.
known actors, I really liked Damon Harriman in here. That was Ruse, the sidekick to the lieutenant that made it throughout most of the movie. That dude, we've seen him twice in this last year portray Charlie Manson, and he's really good at it in both Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Mindhunter.
Interesting.
Oh, that's who that was. I was trying to figure out why he looked familiar. That's crazy.
He's
and he
like
had a great run as Dewey Crow on Justified.
You know who he is? He's like a young version of that dude whose name I can't remember. Who's like he's in the creepy guy from the first couple of seasons of The Walking Dead. I think he's a biker. What's that guy's name? He was in Slither too.
Daryl?
No.
No. Daryl's brother is who I think you're.
Yes.
Merle.
Yes.
Merle.
He's like that guy. I can't remember that guy's name.
He's in what's it called? The Marvel movies.
Yeah.
He's
oh God, he's like
Henry
the blue
Portrait
guy.
of Sarah Miller.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
The
God,
Henry
what's
guy.
his name?
it's on the tip of my tongue, yeah. But like he's kind of like a younger version of that
Michael
guy.
Rooker.
Yes,
right?
Michael Rooker. Like just kind of
nailed it.
kind of severe and off-putting in a way that Michael Rooker is.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Although I feel like Michael Rooker has like a soft, like silly side, and I feel like this guy doesn't. Maybe he does somewhere, but
I don't know. Well, it's hard to judge in this
I mean,
movie.
as a human, I would assume he was.
I don't know. I don't know this guy as a human.
I don't know. You ever watch a performance that's so good, you're like, I don't know if I want to talk to you in real life?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a testament to how good they are, but still, whoops. All right, guys, we got to move on here. The Nightingale, would you recommend this, Sophie?
I'm gonna give a qualified recommendation, which is yes, but I think it is perfectly valid to skip the first 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I do. I really 100% do.
Casey.
Yes. Just be ready for it. Prepare yourself.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a stunning movie. It's the only word I can think to describe it. Like it's over and you're just like, holy shit. Like what did I just watch? But I also think Sophie's dead on. Like there's gonna be people who don't want to watch this, and I think if you're sensitive to that, like you might, I don't know.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't think you're gonna watch this and have a great time. Like you're not gonna kick back with a couple of beers and
for sure
chuckle.
All right, guys, that's gonna do it for the Nightingale. Let's take a quick break and do some fan mail.
Our greatest fears are all around us, hiding in nightmares, shrouded in evil, waiting to be unleashed.
You shine on, boy.
Shine on?
The Bible calls it having vision. I can feel it coming off you like heat.
From Stephen King, the creator of It, The Tommyknockers, and The Stand, comes a completely new vision of terror.
Seize your destiny, Mr. Torrance. Coming, sweetheart.
Are you gonna hurt me, Daddy?
Come down here and take your medicine! Oh, my. my God.
You're never taking my son!
This spring, go to hell and pray you get out alive. Rebecca De Mornay, Steven Weber.
Daddy's mad at Mommy.
Stephen King's The Shining.
Hey, I'm Lisa Zane from Nightmare on Elm Street, and you are listening to Bloody Good Horror.
Send feedback to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or on Twitter using hashtag AskBGH. Join Patreon to get back episodes and much more. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror.
Eric, did you pick that Shining miniseries bumper on purpose?
Yeah, so fun story about that bumper. So I've streamlined the workflow of making the bumper. So it used to be really hard for me to do it. It was a pain. That's why I kind of reran them a lot. But now it's like I can pretty much get a new one every week. I had pulled that trailer hoping to run it on the Dr. Sleep episode, forgot about it, and then I saw it when I was editing the other day. I'm like, hey, we're going to run that this week. So there you go. It's funny because I've been hearing a lot about that series lately because like I've been listening to Mick Garris's podcast, and he interviewed Mike Flanagan, and Mike Flanagan like apparently obsessed with the TV version of The Shining because he's such a fan of the book and he just loved what it was doing like with the characters. But I remember watching it as a kid, and like it's just funny. So I'm like feeling a little bit of a revisionist history vibe on this thing now because of Dr. Sleep, and I'm just listening to that trailer. I'm like, that sounds awful. Like,
well, the way they marketed
just
those things
bad.
in back then. I mean, that's I.
But just hearing
agree,
Steven
but-
Weber do his like Jack Torrance voice, I'm like,
Yeah,
maybe
it's
I'm alright.
Steven Weber.
It's
yeah.
a lot, but like the reason I ask is that Behold and Electric Terror just covered the Shining miniseries.
So
I
what-
was gonna bring that up.
so what'd you
so-
think?
Like I just
Well, you were
watched
on-
it for the first time, and the episode came out this week. So
I can't even imagine what it's like watching it for the first time in 2019. What's your broad feelings?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, the effects are very bad, and the performances are kind of all over the place. And I would still, I think it's worth listening to the episode because we were very, very much split. Some people on the episode hate the Kubrick movie and everything about it, and like,
I'm
Whoa,
pretty sure I
whoa,
can guess
whoa,
who
whoa.
some people is.
so it's yeah.
That he likes
so
glass.
Imagine hating one of the best horror films ever made. Period.
it's not Jason.
No, it's definitely
No.
not Jason. I
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I'm
No,
pretty
I know
sure
who it is. Yeah.
Andrew has very strong feelings about Stanley Kubrick. I feel like we all knew that was
Oh
a thing.
my God.
So anyway, if
but,
you want
like-
to listen to Behold and Electric Terror, so this is
Yeah,
a bloody good horror.
exactly.
This is a bloody good horror spinoff. You guys talk about TV stuff. When you sign up to become a patron at any level, you get a link. It's basically a feed. You can pop it into any podcatcher you use. It'll pull that stuff down. You can also, for whatever reason, you can't get it to work, you can't find it. We shoot out emails when those shows go out. So if you're a patron, you get the emails. You can just go right to Patreon and listen to a file right on the site. So it's super easy to get a hold of that stuff. And you can also
And
check out.
we're doing a bunch of Stephen King miniseries right now, so we're getting ready to cover the Langoliers.
Oh,
so
dude,
now
okay.
is the best time to become a patron.
Now you're talking, because The Langoliers is one of the worst things ever made and is one of my favorite movies from when I was a kid. I used to rent it from Blockbuster. It's awful. I love it. It's terrible.
I'm
and
half
it's
an
great.
hour into it and I'm so angry. Okay, I'm just gonna angry text you.
No, like Bronson Pinchot's performance in that movie is like, you have to see it to believe it. And wait, so you've never seen this, Sophie?
No, I've never seen
Oh,
it, and I'm only
wait.
half an hour into it.
Just
so.
wait till you get to the CG at the end. You will not believe it.
Oh my God. I can't wait. I can't wait.
I loved in that trailer when they mentioned, I don't know what they say, like from the mind of Tommy Knockers. That was another god awful miniseries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so bad.
I mean, it's kind of the funny
Ugh.
thing about listening to that Mick Garris interview with like Flanagan, which is like Flanagan just came in. He's made 2 Stephen King movies that are so many light years better than anything. I mean, like Mick Garris had a couple movies that were alright, but like I feel like Mick Garris was kind of, I don't know, he hewed too closely to the King stuff in a way that I feel like hurts it sometimes. And also they were working with within TV and TV budgets, and so I think he was limited in a
Well,
lot of the stuff he was doing.
Yeah, and TV pacing, right?
And
Like they
90s
had to have
and
commercial breaks.
It was the 90s, and so you're working within a system that I think is kind of setting you up to make bland stuff to begin with. But I recommend the interview. It's incredible. Like hearing Mike Flanagan is so passionate about Stephen King and The Shining, and hearing him talk about walking the balance beam between the two source materials is like really interesting. So yeah, that bumper also reminded me, John, my remix of A Nightmare on Elm Street hit the streets this week.
Streeted.
Yes.
I think they used to call that, right?
Have you seen it, John?
Yeah, I've watched it multiple times.
Yes. I figured you just queued up first thing in the morning when you get up.
I do. Yeah, no, exactly.
It's John's alarm now.
Have you seen it, Sophie?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
It's okay. I'm just kidding. It's very good.
So yeah, this is I basically took I sampled the original theme song. Actually, I used MIDI files, so like you can they're not, that part isn't a sample. But then I took a bunch of voice clips, sound samples from the movie, remixed it into a song. I guess I would call it electronic, John. I don't know. So there's some hip hop in there.
Well, you used computers to make it.
Yeah, well, John,
like there's no real instrument.
I'm talking music genres, John. Okay, like I know you're 100 years old, but just stay with me here. And
I believe they call it electronic music.
Then I took like clips from the movie and kind of edited them to the rhythm of the song. It's a totally crazy thing when it's finished, but I very much enjoy doing it. So that's on. If you check out youtube.com, search for Bloody Good Horror. You can subscribe to us, and you can check that video out. Yeah. I had at least one person tell me, John, they get very excited when I release new tracks. One person who's my #1 fan now.
So like every once in a while that life gets good for 5 minutes every 3 years, or
listen.
Yeah.
For the record, I saw it and liked it too.
Oh, thank you, Casey. Yeah, so check that out on YouTube. We got one email this week. We actually got 2 emails, John, but the other one is about College John, and the person requested that we only read it when Joe's here. So that may literally have to wait till like the new year, but we're gonna honor that guy's request. So we got one email here, info@bloodygoodhorror.com. This is from Brian. Brian says, "This is my first time ever writing in, but I've been listening to Bloody Good Horror faithfully for over 10 years."
You're the man, Brian.
You have to excuse me. I have a cold, so I'm just trying to get through this here. I discovered you guys by accident and haven't missed an episode since. In the past 10 years since I started listening, I got married, had kids, moved across the country, and you guys have been a regular part of pretty much my entire adult life. Even though I've never been to a meetup, I feel like I know you all better than most people in my actual life. I wanted to write in to thank you guys for the show and the years of entertainment, but more important than anything I've written so far, I wanted to thank you for the Gildan soft style t-shirt recommendation. I've never found a decent, cheap, plain t-shirt that I can order online, and the fact that these are like $4 on Amazon is a game changer. You guys are awesome. I selfishly hope you keep doing the podcast until you die. Brian.
I can't wait for the BGH of the future that's just all of you guys in retirement homes.
Oh my God.
Like Casey's still vaping and Eric's just dropping F-bombs at Skype, and everything about it is great.
I feel close to that already, but yeah, I love.
John doesn't know what words are, but he's happy to tell them to you.
I'm really loving that these soft black t-shirts, which I'm wearing right now, are somehow becoming my legacy on this show. Somehow I'm not offended by the fact that the t-shirt recommendation is more important than his 10 years of entertainment he's gotten from us.
Listen, I'm just saying, if we're going to keep mentioning these t-shirts, I want the Gildan people to send us a check.
Give us some Gildan money.
Need to be a big check.
Yeah.
Are these shirts tagless, or do they have a tag? That's important.
There's a tag. Yes. You can cut it off, though. I don't know.
Even if it's not a check, they could at least supply some t-shirts.
Sophie, they're like $4.89, and they're like soft as a baby's bottom, and they're beautiful. And they fit really well.
Is that what you were wearing at the meetup?
They're really good yeah, it was. Yeah. They're really good dad bod shirts too. They're very nicely proportioned, so I like it. All right, info@bloodygoodhorror.com. What do we got on Twitter? Casey,
Twitter.
Casey, I want to mention you ignored a C.O. Flanagan tweet last week that I actually thought was funny. I didn't see it till after we went back.
I wasn't sure how it was going to play, so I I made a judgment call at the time.
If you have a question,
That's
just
my bad.
paste it and we'll tell you.
But yes, we have a hashtag out there, Ask BGH. If you got a question, any question, ask us. We're going to start out with a COW Flanagan tweet here. What do y'all think of old Joe Bob getting dunked on by horror Twitter? Where do you guys fall in when it comes to message first horror, as JB put it? I like the messages, like in Midsummer when it says, don't eat no pubes.
Is that the message of Midsummer? I'm not sure that it is, but yeah.
No, that's close.
I'm not going to
It's
lie.
a message.
I'm gonna weigh in first because I feel like people who have more like emotional attachment to Joe Bob probably have things to say. But I just want to say, as someone who doesn't have like nostalgic connections to Joe Bob, like even if what he said was not intended to be shitty, like the fact that it was a comment that he made specifically about a woman or like a female helmed film felt less than ideal to me.
Yeah, I felt like it was a semi out of touch thing for, but understandably coming out of like a 60 some odd year old dude who's kind of set in his ways or whatever. I think that the lineup of people to dunk on him on Twitter is really gross, and I just in generally, regardless of him, like it's the whole thing lately is just kind of like a little much for me. Like everybody's got to get their hot take in and their quip about it. I feel like it was at best a misguided thing that he said, I feel like, but he also came back and I felt like I don't know if you follow Darcy on Twitter, Sophie, but she's on that show with him, and she was basically talking on Twitter about how he felt really awful about it and like wanted to make sure people kind of understood what he was saying. So I think like he definitely was taken aback by it, and I'm really interested to see if he addresses it on the marathon coming up on the 13th. I feel like he kind of has to, but that doesn't mean he will. Like, you never know.
Yeah.
But
I have all the room in the world for like people saying dumb shit on Twitter or in real life and then being like, oh, I didn't mean for it to come across the way it did, or like I didn't understand what I was saying. I've done that and I get it. And so if his intention was not the way it came across, I'm super here for that. And I like the idea of like pushing back on people, but I think like lining up to just like the idea of cancel culture in general, I think can become very toxic and not helpful in some instances. And this feels like one. If what he said is not how he intended it to be communicated, and he wants to like. I
mean, look, too, at the end of the day, frankly, like I find what he said like maybe a little off base and like I don't know, like I would say like he's probably a little off base, but let's say I don't think it's that like he didn't say something. Come on, say something wildly offensive. You know what I mean? Like, I just think he had like a kind of out of touch old man take, and the response to it felt to me like a little disproportionate. But that's
well, but I think it really is important that like his out of touch old man take was about a movie that's about like patriarchy and Me Too stuff that was written and directed by women. Because then it feels like, because I think then what people felt, whether or not this is what he intended, is like, oh, so horror was better when it was by dudes because women just like want to put a message on it, I think is how it was read by some people. That's how I read it when I first saw it and was like pretty upset by it.
I thought his larger point was that like filmmakers didn't outwardly talk about the political message of their films as much back then. Obviously, there wasn't a platform for it. It is much more like there's been a move. I mean, the larger point is like there's because of movies like Get Out and Us and these other things, like there's been a movement. Like this political horror is a movement that's happening, and I think that's why we're hearing about it more often. And so like I think the larger discussion missed the point that some things have changed. And like the conversation we had on Slack, which I was trying not to get roped into, but I did. But like the conversation we had on Slack made the really good point. I think that like, look, when you're a white filmmaker in the 70s or 80s or whatever, a lot of those films do have political messages, but a lot of times they are subtext. And the thing that was pointed out was like, if you're a white filmmaker, it is your privilege to look at those things as subtext, because it's not necessarily something impacting your life as much as it is this new wave of black filmmakers, women filmmakers, like minority filmmakers, right? And so like I think that some of the thing that bothered me about some of the discourse is like this refusal to admit that like things are different now. Things are different now and I think a positive way. But I don't know. To me, his larger point was just like, this wasn't discussed before. I think what he missed was the nuance of why. Why wasn't this discussed before versus why is it being discussed now and why is that a good thing?
He's a 60-year-old white man. Like that
Yes.
shouldn't surprise anyone. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever.
I also
don't
personally don't think being a 60-year-old white dude makes your opinion invalid. Because I'm
No,
gonna be one
well,
someday. I'd like to think I'm allowed to have an opinion.
Well, and I would also add it doesn't like take you off the hook for saying dumb shit, but like me personally, as a only 37-year-old white man, like I just like will discount essentially what's being said.
I also go the route of like never try to make a point that deeply on Twitter. Like he's trying to make and he's trying to get into like a pretty heady subject that I think what I think is he didn't really understand what he was stepping into. And Twitter is not the platform for it whatsoever.
No, definitely not. I mean, look, I feel like I like go around making this point all the time. Like
we should point out,
like not on Twitter.
Yeah, we should point out, Schnars is not even on Twitter. Had no idea any of this happened. Like,
no, well, I did only because I read about it.
So we were also originally gonna not do Black Christmas in theaters, but we discussed it and we're gonna get out to it now because I think like it's becoming.
The problem is it comes the same week that we're doing the end of the year.
God damn it!
So we're probably not going to get to it till January.
Okay. Son of a bitch.
But you got to see it because Sophia Takal and April Wolf are like fucking badass. Sorry, I've dropped a lot of F-bombs.
I really like Imogen.
We're trying to do better at not.
I'm a big Imogen Poots fan. I like her. But yeah.
You what?
I said I'm a big Imogen Poots fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casey, let's keep going.
Alrighty, we have another one here from an old friend at Codiolo. It's 1999. Zombies overtake a mall you're in. What store do you barricade yourself in?
99, huh? Oh, I mean,
is there a Sears? Because that's like the obvious one with all the tools and probably.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Spencer's, just for fun, just for funsies.
Wait, but are you trying to survive?
Whap them with stripper poles or something? Like, what are you gonna do?
Just have a little fun before you die. I don't know.
Get some Orange Julius if you want to have delicious beverages.
I was thinking of what. I can't think of the name of it. I was thinking of that leather store that used to be in every mall in the 90s. They'll sold leather jackets.
Yeah, and you walk by and you could smell it from like 20 feet away when you walk by it.
Yeah,
but
it's going to be harder for a zombie to bite through his leather jacket. Come on.
I don't know. 99. It could have just been the GameStop or whatever the hell the equivalent was called. I wouldn't even have known there was a zombie apocalypse happening if you locked me in one of those with all the games. So.
The mall that I grew up near had like a kitchen supply store that I feel like would have a lot of knives and stuff. So I feel like that's where I'd want to be.
Sears is the right answer for survival, just to be clear. Like but that's fine.
I don't know what Sears has other than like old people clothes.
No, they have the big tool section.
They got Craftsman tools. You get a lifetime warranty.
There you go.
Yeah, but I would take a big old knife over a power drill any day.
I don't know. It's a pretty powerful power.
Agree to disagree.
I mean, I'd probably just go.
If it was like an impact driver, I would take an impact driver. That would probably be the best.
I'd probably just go up to the roof and jump off.
Yeah, but you would need to have an air compressor with you to use that.
Yeah, they probably sell those too. No?
Are you going to carry an air compressor around?
I'm pretty strong.
John, you got to think this through.
All right. We got a couple more tweets from Codiolo, but they're pretty similar. So in the sake of brevity, we'll save those for another time. I'm going to jump ahead here to at Pod and Pendulum, the Pod and Pendulum podcast. And this one is a heartwarming, gets right down to it. I'm currently engaged in a high-stakes game of chicken with my daughter. I think she knows the truth about Santa, but won't say it. Do I just ask her or pretend she doesn't know for one more at Christmas?
Oh, you totally just pretend and mess with her.
Yeah. No, I would say pretend and just
but it's also important. It's also important to point out they followed up with another tweet that says, also our daughter is 28.
Oh, stop.
when we were kids, my aunt would like legit past the time when we all believed in Santa, my aunt would come to the house in the middle of the night with bells and like go outside by the window and like shake them.
Yeah. We took the task of once Delaney asks, we're not going to lie to her. And eventually, probably like third grade-ish, she finally asked.
I'd guess second, third grade is most kids these days. Maybe younger now.
I mean, if you're smart as a child, you pretend as long as you can because
I don't know.
it maximizes your Christmas output.
I also think a lot of parents get weird about it now, and they're like, "We're not going to lie to our kids," and it's like, okay, we get it. You hate fun. That's fine. Like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did any of you do the thing growing up where I don't know? We learned this in school, so I don't know like where it comes from, but there is some. Maybe it was like Switzerland. They do like a St. Nicholas Eve where you like put a note in your shoes for Santa, and then he leaves candy when he takes your Christmas list.
Definitely did not do that.
Okay, so we did that when I was growing up, and like my brother and I are the oldest, and like knew that Santa wasn't real, and I am convinced that my sister held on to like pretending that she didn't know that Santa wasn't real for several years. And my mom worked overnight, so like one night my mom was at work and my sister put her shoes out, and I called my mom like, what am I supposed to do? And she was like, there's chocolate coins in my room, just like put some in her shoe and put Hannah's Christmas list on my bed.
We did that. We did Saint Nick with Delaney, but I think it came from my mother-in-law's family, who's all Irish, and so it was old shoes, Christmas list.
Yeah.
Santa take the Christmas list and leave a new pair of shoes.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah.
All right, last tweet. Let's do it.
All right, last tweet comes from. Ooh, that's a long name. Don't chew the gold, Joseph. At Real Joe Scar. Pecan, sweet potato, or pumpkin? What kind of pie are you guys celebrating with over there?
Oh, pumpkin.
Apple?
Yeah,
Pecan?
apple too.
Pecan.
Pecan's great if you want the beatus.
Yeah, well.
It's
Yeah,
like
well.
it's a sugar pie basically.
One night only, Eric.
Do I look like I'm going to turn away sugar pie?
I had
think
never.
Casey's nickname should be Sugar Pie.
I had never had it because it's not really a thing you like make in the Northeast that often. And
You've never had pecan pie?
One time, when I got my first job out of college, one of my coworkers, his wife made one and brought it in because we were saying we'd never had one. Yeah, it was pretty good, but I wanted to die afterwards. I was like, I can't eat that. That's way too much.
We get Amish sugar cream pies around here at Thanksgiving time too. That's some good stuff.
There was
also sugar pie.
There was all
The
kinds of.
Amish sure can bake.
There was all
Yes,
kinds
they
of
can.
all kinds of talk of like regional pies on Slack last week for Thanksgiving. That was really interesting. So yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah.
Pies.
Yeah.
Info at bloodygoodhorror.com is the email address. If you want to support the show, check out patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. You can see a live stream of the show every week. You can get on Slack. John, there's been a huge influx of Slack people last week. Like all these new people jumping right in, participating. It's been really nice to see, and everyone's been really like welcoming. So if you want to get a part of the community, you just got to become a patron at the Belial level. And if you are and you didn't get that link, just hit us up. We'll send you the link. So there you go.
It is the absolute best bang for your buck for wasting time at work.
Yeah,
folks.
somebody came in there today and was like, hey, I'm just looking for a way to waste time at work that's not work Slack. And I was like, oh, we got this.
It's like, oh, you have no idea what you just got yourself in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. It's really honestly turned into like a really active community, which has been a really cool thing to see. So
Yeah, that's a blast.
there you go. All right, guys. We're still working on the schedule for the end of the year, so keep an eye on Twitter at BG Horror. We'll send all that information out, also on Facebook. But we'll definitely see you next week.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.